Burnout is a choice, not a curse. What if you're actually choosing burnout every day? This realization freed me from my own exhaustion cycle. I was stuck in a pattern, answering emails at 11 p.m., skipping breaks, wearing exhaustion like a badge of honor, until I discovered how to break free. In this video, I'm sharing 5 mental frameworks that transformed my relationship with work and energy. These practical tools help me escape the burnout crossroads when nothing else worked. From treating your energy like a financial portfolio to implementing micro-recovery protocols, these approaches are backed by psychology research on how high performers maintain output without sacrificing themselves in the process. My breaking point. Remember when I showed up to that important client meeting with 2 different shoes? That wasn't just a funny mistake, it was my body screaming that I was at my breaking point. 1 black heel, 1 navy pump. The clients actually laughed it off, but I just stood there, frozen, staring down at my feet, wondering how I hadn't noticed. That moment still flashes in my mind because it was my wake-up call. You know, I used to think burnout was something that just happened to me, like catching a cold or getting stuck in traffic. An unavoidable force of nature that ambitious people eventually face. Just push through it, I'd tell myself. Everyone feels this way. But that's the thing. Burnout isn't something that randomly selects its victims. It follows patterns, and I was creating those patterns every single day without realizing it. When I hit rock bottom, it went beyond mismatched shoes. I was forgetting important deadlines that used to be second nature to me. I found myself crying in bathroom stalls between meetings, splashing cold water on my face, and reapplying makeup like nothing was wrong. I was working 24/7, but somehow drowning more with each passing day. My inbox had hundreds of unread messages. My notes were scattered across different apps, and I couldn't remember the last time I had a full night's sleep without waking up in a panic. My life 3 years ago was unsustainable. My calendar was a solid block of color. Back-to-back meetings with 0 buffer time. I'd rush from one conference room to another while simultaneously answering messages. My phone constantly buzzed with notifications, a stream of demands for my attention. My to-do list never ended. I'd complete 10 tasks and somehow end the day with 15 more. I stayed up until 2 a.m. for quiet hours to catch up, then dragged myself out of bed 4 hours later to repeat everything. Coffee wasn't a pleasure, it was life support. The worst part was the isolation. I stopped reaching out to friends because I didn't have time. I canceled plans because something came up at work. I missed my niece's birthday party because I was catching up on weekend work. I was physically present at family dinners, but mentally drafting emails. My partner would talk to me and I'd nod without hearing a word. I was there, but not really there. And I thought this was normal. I thought this was what success looked like. I believed if I pushed harder, worked longer, sacrificed more, eventually things would calm down. But they never did, because I never changed the underlying patterns. What shocked me was realizing how many little choices I made daily that led me straight into burnout. I'd say yes to projects when already overloaded. I'd check email first thing in bed. I'd skip lunch for just one more task. I'd promise deliverables on impossible timelines because I didn't want to disappoint anyone. Each decision seemed small, but together, they created a perfect storm. I tried the usual fixes. I took a vacation but spent half on my laptop. I bought fancy planners and productivity apps. I even considered quitting my job. But the turning point wasn't any of those things. It was something much more powerful that I discovered through desperation. After the mismatched shoes incident, I finally admitted something had to change. I couldn't continue this way. So I did what I always do when facing a problem. I researched. I read every book and study on burnout I could find. I talked to psychologists. I interviewed people who balanced ambition and well-being. What I discovered transformed everything. Burnout isn't simply about being busy or working hard. It's about specific psychological patterns and habits that drain us faster than we can recover. It's about how we think about our work, our worth, and our energy. And most importantly, it's about choices we make, often unconsciously, that we can learn to make differently. What I learned completely changed my relationship with work and energy. It's not a quick fix or productivity hack. It's a fundamental shift in approaching ambition, while protecting well-being. These frameworks help me rebuild my career sustainably, accomplishing more without constantly feeling underwater. So is burnout really a choice, or are we victims of circumstance? The research shows we have more control than we think, not through vague advice like practice self-care or learn to say no, but through specific frameworks addressing the real psychological dynamics behind burnout. External factors matter. Toxic workplaces, economic pressures, systemic issues are real. But within those constraints, we have more agency than we realize. Think of it this way. We can't control the weather, but we can choose to bring an umbrella. We can't always control work circumstances, but we can control how we respond, structure our energy, and create boundaries. Those choices determine whether we burn out or thrive. My breakthrough came when I stopped seeing burnout as inevitable and recognized it as resulting from specific patterns I could change. It wasn't about working less, though sometimes that's part of it. It was about working differently, understanding the hidden dynamics of energy, boundaries, thinking, patterns, recovery, and purpose. Looking back at who I was 3 years ago, I barely recognize that person. I'm still driven and passionate about my work, but now I channel that drive in ways that sustain rather than drain me. My ambition and well-being aren't enemies anymore, they're partners. Now let me introduce you to the first framework that revolutionized my approach: energy as currency. This powerful concept will show you exactly how to prevent burnout by managing your most precious resource, not your time, but your energy. Energy as currency, your hidden bank account. It's crazy. We check our bank accounts daily, but never once check our energy balance. What if I told you that tracking where your mental and physical energy goes reveals shocking patterns that explain why you're always exhausted despite doing everything right? I discovered this the hard way when I finally decided to treat my energy with the same respect I give my finances. And let me tell you, the results were eye-opening. When I actually sat down and tracked my energy for a week, I was horrified. I had been hemorrhaging my most precious resource on things that weren't even important to me. Those endless quick meetings consumed my entire morning. Those just 5 minutes tasks multiplied until my whole day vanished. I was making terrible investments with my energy every single day and wondering why I felt bankrupt by Wednesday afternoon. This energy finance parallel isn't merely metaphorical. Neuroscience research confirms that our brains process energy expenditure similarly to financial decisions. A 2019 study in the Journal of Neuroscience found that identical neural pathways activate when deciding about effort as when making money choices. Our brains calculate an effort-to-reward ratio for every task we consider. Let me show you what my energy audit looked like 3 years ago. I created a simple grid with my energy levels throughout the day on one axis and the activities I was doing on the other. I discovered that I consistently spent my peak energy hours, 9 to 11 a.m., when my brain was firing on all cylinders, on responding to others' emails, and sitting in status meetings where I barely spoke. Meanwhile, I attempted my most creative and strategic work at 4 p.m., when my brain was running on fumes. It resembled taking my financial bonus check and spending it on unused subscriptions while putting rent on a high-interest credit card. No financial advisor would recommend that strategy with money, so why apply it to something even more valuable: limited daily energy? This approach isn't about working less, though that might naturally happen. It's about strategic energy allocation. If you had $100 to invest daily, would you distribute it randomly to whoever asked? Or would you carefully consider the potential return on each investment? That's the energy as currency framework. Recognizing that your energy deserves the same careful allocation as your financial resources. Through research and personal experiments, I identified 3 major energy drains that ambitious people overlook. First is decision fatigue, which explains why Steve Jobs wore the same outfit daily. Each decision, no matter how small, taxes our mental energy. After hundreds of minor decisions, our ability to make good choices plummets. This explains why, after back-to-back meetings, you order takeout instead of cooking that planned healthy meal. The second drain is emotional labor, energy required to manage feelings and expressions at work. This particularly affects people in client-facing roles or toxic environments. Constantly masking true feelings, like pretending enthusiasm for a doomed project, creates compounding energy debt. The third drain was task switching. Studies show each time you switch tasks, checking email mid-report writing, it takes approximately 23 minutes to fully regain focus. I did this dozens of times daily, working constantly, but accomplishing little. My solution? I developed a simple energy tracking method that transformed my productivity. For 1 week, I set an hourly timer. When it rang, I noted what I was doing, my energy level, and whether the task felt energizing or draining. After 7 days, patterns emerged clearly. I identified when my energy peaked and crashed, which activities consistently drained me, and which ones actually replenished me. With this data, I restructured my day completely. I protected peak energy hours for creative work and strategic thinking. I grouped similar tasks to minimize task switching costs. I scheduled recovery periods before and after draining activities. I began declining energy-intensive commitments with minimal returns. The results were remarkable. Within a month, I doubled my productive output while working fewer hours by aligning with my natural energy rhythms instead of fighting them. It wasn't about working harder, but allocating smarter. The Energy as Currency framework consists of 3 core principles. First, identifying energy leaks, activities, people, and environments that drain you without adequate return, like withdrawals from your account. Second, making conscious energy investments, deliberately choosing where your resources go based on potential returns. Third, building energy reserves, creating practices that replenish your energy faster than you spend it. This approach succeeds by converting abstract daily energy into something concrete and measurable. Just as tracking expenses reveals financial patterns, monitoring energy expenditure uncovers invisible habits. A practical example. I discovered video calls drain me twice as much as in-person meetings. I started scheduling recovery time after Zoom sessions and converted certain recurring meetings to phone calls I could take while walking. This simple adjustment freed enough mental bandwidth to tackle a long postponed creative project. I also identified certain people as energy vampires, those who leave you feeling marathon exhausted after brief interactions. Recognizing these encounters as actual withdrawals from my energy account helped me engage more intentionally with these individuals. The framework helped me realize that seemingly unproductive activities, afternoon walks, or hand-sketching ideas before execution, were actually valuable energy investments. Though appearing as wasted time, they generated substantial returns in creativity and mental clarity that exceeded their energy cost. Boundary redesign, the art of strategic no's. Those energy investments changed my productivity, but they kept getting hijacked by one thing: my complete inability to set boundaries. What I discovered next completely challenged my assumption that always being available was the path to success. In fact, research shows the exact opposite is true, and this revelation transformed my calendar and how people actually perceived my work. Think about the last time you set a boundary at work. Maybe you declined a meeting, stopped answering emails after 7 p.m., or pushed back on an unrealistic deadline. Did you feel a little pang of guilt? That uncomfortable feeling that you were somehow letting people down? I used to feel that all the time. I thought setting boundaries meant being difficult or uncooperative. I was convinced that my willingness to be available 24/7 was my competitive advantage. If someone needed me at 9 p.m. on a Friday, I'd be there. Weekend email? I'd respond within minutes. Last-minute request that required me to cancel personal plans? No problem. I wore this constant availability like a badge of honor. But here's what's fascinating. A study from the Harvard Business Review found that the highest performers aren't the ones who say yes to everything. They're actually the ones who set the most boundaries. They're just strategic about which ones they choose. When I first read that, I was skeptical. How could saying no possibly make me more successful? But the research was clear. Boundary setting directly linked to higher performance and stronger professional relationships. So I started looking more closely at the most respected people in my field. I noticed something I'd completely missed before. They weren't actually available all the time. They had very clear parameters around their time and energy. When they were in meetings, they were fully present. when they were off, they were truly off. And this shocked me. People didn't respect them less for it. They actually respected them more. Through my research, I identified 3 specific types of boundaries that most professionals never set, but absolutely should. Time boundaries define when you're available for work and when you're not. I was treating my schedule like a public park, open to anyone, at any hour. I started small by creating time containers, designated specific hours for specific activities. I blocked 9-11 a.m. as my deep work time. No meetings, no calls, no interruptions. I also established a firm workday end at 6:30 p.m. This simple change gave my days a protective structure they desperately needed. Expectation boundaries clarify what others can reasonably expect from you regarding turnaround time, availability, and deliverables. Without these, people naturally assume your fastest response time is your standard. I remember having to reset expectations with my boss when she added another urgent request while I was already overloaded. Instead of my usual, "I'll get it done somehow," I said, "I'm committed to delivering quality work on the Anderson project by Thursday as we discussed." Taking on the Stevens report now would mean either pushing the Anderson deadline to Monday or delivering lower quality work on both. Which would you prefer? Her response transformed our working relationship. Rather than disappointment, she appreciated the clarity. She made an informed decision based on reality, rather than assuming I could somehow bend the laws of physics. From then on, our conversations about deadlines became more transparent and realistic. Accessibility boundaries determine how and when people can reach you. These were game changers in our hyper-connected world where instant responses are expected around the clock. I implemented a notification detox, turning off non-essential alerts and setting up after-hours email autoresponders. I even removed email from my phone entirely. This sounds extreme, but I asked myself, is any work email truly so urgent it can't wait until I'm at my computer? For me, the answer was no. For genuine emergencies, people could call. Setting these boundaries created a professional fortress, not to keep people out, but to ensure what happened inside was valuable and deliberate. The research supports this approach. A study from the Journal of Occupational Health Psychology found that clear boundaries improve team performance by creating clarity and preventing resentment. Another study published in the Academy of Management Journal revealed that leaders who modeled healthy boundaries had more engaged and productive teams. When you respect your own boundaries, you implicitly respect others' boundaries too, creating a culture of mutual respect. The counterintuitive truth I discovered was that setting clear boundaries made people respect me more, not less. When I stopped being instantly available, people valued my time and input more highly. My words carried more weight in meetings. My opinions were sought more deliberately. My relationships improved because I brought my best self to interactions, rather than a depleted, resentful version secretly checking the clock. I was fully present when working and fully present when not. The boundary redesign method that transformed my work involved 3 steps: identify, communicate, and reinforce. First, I identified which boundaries would most impact my energy and productivity, asking what situations consistently drain me or create resentment. Next, I communicated these boundaries clearly and unapologetically, framing them as mutual benefits. To ensure I can give your projects my best thinking, I check email between 9 a.m. and 7 p.m. on weekdays. Finally, I reinforced these boundaries consistently. The hardest part. Every time I responded to a non-emergency email at 10 p.m., I taught people my boundary wasn't real. Healthy boundary setting for ambitious professionals isn't about building walls or being inflexible. It's about strategically protecting your most valuable resources, time, energy, and attention, communicated with confidence and clarity. Number 5, cognitive reframing, breaking the burnout mindset. Strategic boundaries protect your resources, but even with them in place, I kept hitting burnout walls until I discovered the hidden culprit, my own thinking patterns. Did you know there are specific thought distortions that ambitious people mistake for normal thinking, but they actually rewire your brain chemistry to accelerate burnout? Yeah, I was shocked too. I remember sitting in my therapist's office after implementing all those perfect boundaries we just talked about. I was confused. I'm doing everything right, I told her. So why do I still feel like I'm drowning? She smiled that knowing smile therapists have and asked me a simple question. What stories are you telling yourself about your work? This stopped me in my tracks. Stories? I'm just working hard. But as we explored further, I realized my brain was running background programs, distorted thought patterns, that were pushing me toward burnout despite my well-crafted external boundaries. Our thoughts actively shape our physiology. According to research in cognitive behavioral therapy, the way we interpret situations changes our brain chemistry. Repeatedly engaging in certain thought patterns creates neural pathways that release stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline. We're essentially pressing the gas pedal on burnout with our minds, even when our external circumstances seem fine. I discovered 3 main thought distortions driving my burnout. First was catastrophizing. Thoughts like, if I don't finish this project perfectly, my career is over. This sent my stress response into overdrive, making me work frantically late into the night. The truth? No single project would make or break my career, but my brain was operating on this distorted story. The second pattern, all or nothing thinking, showed up as, I'll rest when it's done. The problem with knowledge work is nothing is ever truly done. This pattern had me constantly postponing rest, waiting for a finish line that never appeared. Just one more email, then I can relax, I'd think. That moment never came. The third culprit was shoulding. Thoughts beginning with, I should be able to handle this, or I shouldn't need help. These created intense shame whenever I couldn't meet unrealistic standards. Shame makes us hide struggles and avoid asking for help, exactly what accelerates burnout. These patterns are so normalized in ambitious circles that we mistake them for good work ethic. We praise the if I don't do it, no one will mindset, not recognizing this messiah complex leads to exhaustion and resentment. We admire those who say, I'll sleep when I'm dead, failing to see the dangerous distortion. Breaking free starts with awareness. I created a thought trigger journal to record situations that stressed me out and the automatic thoughts that followed. One Tuesday afternoon, I caught myself about to cancel lunch with a friend to finish a presentation. As I wrote in my journal, I saw it clearly. If I take this break, I'll fall behind and disappoint everyone. Classic catastrophizing. But awareness alone isn't enough. The next step is cognitive reframing, actively changing these patterns. That day, instead of canceling lunch, I challenged the thought, is it really true I'll disappoint everyone? What's the evidence? Then I reframed it. Taking a break will help me return with fresh ideas. The presentation will be better because I stepped away. I went to lunch, and the presentation turned out fine. The connection between perfectionism and procrastination fascinated me. They're 2 sides of the same burnout coin. When we think this has to be flawless, we often procrastinate from fear of falling short. Then the looming deadline creates enormous stress and we end up rushing anyway. It's a vicious cycle. For the if I don't do it, no one will thought, I started asking, what would happen if I couldn't do this? Would someone else step up? Would the world keep turning? Usually the answer was yes. This helped me prioritize where my energy truly needed to go. For I'll rest when it's done, I reframed to rest is part of the work. Research confirms our brains need periods of rest to consolidate learning and solve complex problems. By seeing rest as essential to productivity rather than its enemy, I could take breaks without guilt. The challenge with cognitive reframing is consistency. These patterns have been reinforced for years. I set phone reminders with questions like, what story are you telling yourself right now? These interruptions helped me catch distorted thinking before it triggered burnout behaviors. Over time, something incredible happened. As my thought patterns changed, my physical symptoms, headaches, insomnia, constant fatigue, began to fade. My brain produced different chemicals because I fed it different thoughts. Cognitive reframing has been shown to reduce cortisol levels and increase dopamine and serotonin, hormones associated with well-being. The most powerful reframe for me was shifting from I have to do this to I choose to do this. That simple change from obligation to choice restored my sense of agency. Even when doing tasks I didn't love, acknowledging my choice made them less draining. Cognitive reframing isn't about positive thinking or denying reality. It's about accurate thinking. Sometimes work is genuinely overwhelming. Sometimes deadlines are truly tight. Reframing doesn't pretend these challenges
Micro-recovery
don't
protocols.
exist. The science
helps
of
us
strategic
respond
rest.
to them
in ways that don't accelerate
While
reframing
burnout.
our thoughts helps tremendously, I was still missing a critical piece of the burnout puzzle. You know how we think weekend catch-up and vacations will save us from burnout? Turns out that's completely backward. And there's a science-backed approach used by top performers that works so much better than our typical push through until the break mentality. I used to pride myself on my ability to power through exhaustion. I'd work for 10, 12, sometimes 14 hours straight, pushing past all those signals my body was sending me. My strategy? I'd recover on the weekend or during that vacation I kept postponing. I thought that's what ambitious people did. Work now, rest later. But here's what shocked me when I dug into the research. This recovery debt approach I was so proud of actually made my burnout worse. A 2018 study in the Journal of Applied Psychology found that people who postpone recovery until weekends or vacations showed significantly higher burnout rates than those who incorporated regular recovery periods throughout their workdays. Think about it. Would you only hydrate after a marathon instead of drinking water throughout the race? Of course not. Yet that's exactly how most of us approach our mental and physical energy at work. We run ourselves into the ground and then wonder why a weekend barely makes a dent in our exhaustion.